when God blesses you, He got more than you in mind for that blessing. It's who we are. It's what we do. Joshua, the book of Joshua, as we already know, is a book that talks about how God executes his vision for his people in delivering them from slavery in Egypt to abundant life in the promised land. Yeah. No, remember that although promised land was part of God's vision for them from the beginning, when they arrived there, they still had to fight to take what God gave them. Right? So abundant life is not just about plenty. It's about victory. It's about living a victorious life. And you can't be victorious at anything without God. You don't have to acknowledge that it was God that gave you the victory, but behind it all, God is still sovereign. And He is still running this planet. And I'm glad about that. We addressed the concept, we began addressing the concept several weeks ago, that God wanted His people who had kind of separated themselves or did not want to go in with the rest of the nation of Israel. I speak now of the tribe of Gad and Manasseh, and Gad, Reuben, and half of Manasseh, who settled on the east side. Y'all remember some of this? And didn't want to go in, although they had been instructed years before they got there. Well, so Joshua has this conversation with them. Y'all remember this? And I shared with you I shared with you one thing, and that was we need to commit. See, what's really going on is, and Brother Pastor Martin Thomas kind of set us up with how God is going to execute vision for the new Maywood. It requires one culture. It requires one culture. And we defined it as one another. Right? So the tribes that were on the east side needed to go in with the 10.5 other tribes, so that the 9.5 other tribes, so that God can give the promised victory to His people. Verse 16. Gigi.
So they answered Joshua.
So they what? They answered Joshua,
saying, all that you command us, we will do.
Now, notice, right? In where's that verse? Verse 1 of chapter 1 of the book of Joshua says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you notice that? He didn't speak to the nation directly. He spoke to Joshua. In verse number 9, the Bible says, have I not commanded you? Do you see that? In verse number 10, the Bible says, then, when? Joshua commanded the officers of the people. God, Joshua, officers, it ain't hit the people yet. There is a chain of authority. And then where's that verse that says, and then the officers commanded, verse 11, pass through. Come on, G. Pass through. That's all right. Pass through the camp. And command the people. Saying, prepare yourself.
Provisions for yourself.
Provisions for yourself. In 3 days, you're going over Jordan to possess the land which God
is giving you to possess.
God, Joshua, officers. That's called chain of command. And then in verse 16, what's the Bible say? So they answered. Who did they answer it? Joshua didn't do no speaking. Joshua was not speaking to them.
Good point, sir.
But because the officers did what they were commanded to do by Joshua, who was commanded by God, the people said, the people answered, what?
All that you command us,
Everything that you command us to do,
we will do.
we will do.
And wherever you send us,
And wherever you send us,
we will go.
we will go. I already know. Nobody likes to be told what to do.
You're right. You're right, God. You're right.
But if there's going to be victory in this new mission,
Well,
somebody, everybody needs to be submissive. Victory in war. Victory in war. In claiming our inheritance. I know that looks funny, but it's there has to be clear-cut authority in the army of God. Somebody has got to make decisions about telling you where to go, about telling you what to do. And your response needs to be patterned by the example of verse 16 in our text.
All that you command us.
Wherever you tell me to go, wherever you tell me to do, we're going to do it. Now notice, Joshua did not have to do all of the talking. When he gets the word from God, he pulled his officers around him. They collaborated. And then they went and tell the people. But the people knew that the officers were representatives of Joshua, who was a representative of God. So they responded, which is,
we will do.
we go where whatever you say do, we gonna do. Wherever you say go, we gonna go. In other words, you can count on me. You can count on us, Joshua. Now, how many of us comprise the new Maywood Church of Christ Army? How many? So you won't mind me saying, I learned something about submission. I know it's like a taboo word. Submission cannot be demanded. Right? That's why you don't like being told what to do. And if I try to tell you what to do, you know your feathers get ruffled. And you leave it up to you to decide whether you're going to do it. I'm going to show you in a minute. There's about 4 or 5 ways that selfish people think. You know, I don't have time. Right? I'm probably not going to get to all of this, but it cannot be demanded. It can only be decided.
Amen.
It can only be decided. When we do not have a submissive response to the word or the command of God, we tend to feel like it's a demand. But when we understand that whatever we get about where to go, what to do, it came from God. The natural response is submission. There are only two, listen, there are 2 basic principles by which, or under which, or according to which everybody lives. And that is the principle of the authority of God and the principle of satanic rebellion. There are only 2. There is no in between. There are only 2. There is big God, capital G, capital O, capital D, and there's little God, small g, small o, small d. He goes by the name of the devil. He's the God, little g-o-d, of this world. You and I have to choose whose authority we're going to live under. And I'm so glad that God put it in Joshua chapter 1, because it means that off the top we got to get this right. It may not be what you want to hear, but it's what you need to hear. So you know you don't like nobody making demands of you. When our culture hears the word submission, our worldly culture, we hear subjugation. And there's a difference. Subjugation is when you are forced to humble yourself. Against your will. Submission is when you choose or decide to humble yourself. And can talk about this for a minute? Huh? There are two ways to do it. One, you got to look out after others first. I know we think sometimes, well, you know, I got to get me right before I can help anybody else. Have you counted your blessings recently? The only reason that we sometimes get dissatisfied and discontented and disillusioned is because we don't realize just how rich we already are.
Amen.
If all you're thinking about is the dollar bill, you're going to miss all of your spiritual blessings that So, what was the thought? Communicate your desire to serve wherever you are needed. Communicate your desire to serve wherever you are needed. Whatever you say, do. I want to look at two passages. And the other point, the other thing that accomplishes submission is you treat or you trust that God is working through your leaders. I want to say so much about that, but I'm just going to say, look out after others first. And two, trust God is working in your leaders. Do you see that in the text? Because, you know, you might think, Brother Lopez just trying to, make more of himself. And do you see that in the text? Do you see how God commanded Joshua? Joshua commanded the officers. The officers commanded the people, and the people said, all that you can, what?
All that you command us, we will do. And wherever you send us, we will go.
And you look, you're not getting out of this life without living under somebody's authority. You understand what I'm saying? You're not getting out of this life. You think you sidestepping, you ain't getting over. You're just getting by until God gets ready to call your number. God's the one running this stuff. Ain't no way you can get full of yourself when you understand who is controlling you. It's not possible. I got two passages. I'm not going to make it. Ephesians chapter 4 and verse number 16. Communicate, don't forget this, communicate your desire to serve, wherever needed. Verse 16, you there yet?
From whom the whole body,
watch this now, from whom the whole body,
joined and knit together,
it's joined and some verse say joined and compacted. I used to be impressed with carpentry because Jesus was a carpenter. Or his daddy was a carpenter. I figured he was in the carpenter shop with his daddy, so he got some of that stuff. The same way this boy looks just like you even when you're not present. In his mannerisms. Yes. And the same way those two girls right there look just like this fella and that lady right there, even when they're not present. They live in the same house, and some of the stuff in their life is rubbing off and it's unstoppable. You can't resist it. Some of that stuff rubs off on them. And there was a guy, he baptized me. No, he didn't baptize me, but it was as a result of my time spent with him. You know, when I came out of the water, he invited me into his home. I used to spend every Sunday afternoon in his house. He had a library in his basement. We leave church, we go into Brother Keith's house, and I'll be in the basement. Call me when the food is ready. And I just was fascinated with his library, right? And I just started drinking. Like, I came up like, and thanks be to God, I'm still like that. I didn't think that could grow. Anyway, but he was a carpenter. And I used to watch how, see this here? This part here is called a joint. It's 2 or 3 pieces that have been shaped in such a way that when you put them together, they fit. If it had not been for the joints on this table, it would not be standing and look the way that it does. Read.
Join and knit together.
When he says joined and knit together, he's saying all of us make up joints. And when we come together, what's what happens?
By what every joint supplies.
By what, see, you wasn't fit to be a part of the joint for your own good. That's why you got to commit to a mission that's greater than you. Folk come to church and act like, you know, I had to come and what have you. You don't understand your function.
Amen. All right.
Amen.
Your function. Let's read.
According to the effect of working, which every part does its share.
Every part, not joint.
Yes. Amen.
This part, and this part, and this part, and this part, every part is supposed to supply its share. Read.
Causes growth of the body.
Causes the body to grow.
For the edifying.
Wait. What's our theme?
Growing forward.
What? Did you say growing forward?
Yes.
We cannot grow forward if we're not supplying our share. Growth is the result of every part supplying its share. Read.
Causes growth of the body.
The growth of the body
For the edifying of itself.
for the edifying of itself.
In love.
The way that the body is built up is because every member submits to do their part. I read about these big birds called cranes. Cranes can fly over a whole continent because they do 2 things. They fly in formation and they choose leaders who can handle turbulent weather. Y'all don't see this coming. Y'all don't even see this coming. No. You guys chose the old hillside. Chose him.
Yes.
God bless you for doing that. Because God chose him to rub up against me. Before Maywood chose me. Before Hillside chose him. Now we got a new one. And we decided. God decided for us. New me. Now, the reason I brought up the crane is because the crane honks for the one who's leading. Honk, honk, honk. Your leader